All right, example 4 says one term of a geometric sequence is a sub 2 equals 6. The common ratio is r equals 3. Write an explicit rule for the nth term. So this one's not asking for the recursive, just the explicit. That setup does not change when it's geometric. So I need to know what my first term is, my rate is, and then I can write a rule. They do tell me my r value, but they don't tell me my first term. So I'm going to plug in this 6 into a sub n, and then my n value is going to be 2. That'll tell me, or give me 6 equals a sub 1 times my ratio of 3 raised to the power of 2 minus 1. Okay, and if I simplify my exponent, it's just going to be 3 to the power of 1, or just 3. And then I can divide both sides by 3 to get my a value of 2. That gives me enough information now to write my final rule. So a sub n is going to equal my first term of 2 times my common ratio of 3 to the power of n minus 1. So all of your rules should have an n value in them when you are done. All right, the next two, these ones are very similar. They give us two terms of a geometric sequence, so right away they tell us what equation we should be using, and they are a sub 2 equals negative 8 and a sub 8, or a sub 7, sorry, equals negative 256. They want you to find the explicit rule for the nth term. All right, so just like with the arithmetic ones, when we have 2, we're going to write two equations. So I'm going to have negative 8 equals, they don't tell me my first term, and they don't tell me my r value. But they did give me an n value here of 2, so I'll have 2 minus 1. And that can just be simplified to a sub 1 equals r to the first power. Then for my second term they give us, we can also plug that into an equation. Negative 256 equals a sub 1 times my r value to the 7 minus 1, which I can simplify that to just have the exponent of 6. Okay. Now, with the arithmetic sequences, we had two equations, and in arithmetic, we add and subtract to get to the next term, and for geometric, we multiply and divide to get the next term. When we had the two equations with the arithmetic, we subtracted them. For the geometric ones, we are going to divide one equation by the other. So I'm going to take the equation with the smaller values and write it underneath the equation with the larger values. And we are dividing to simplify. That way, when we divide, these a sub 1s are going to cancel each other out. And then also I can simplify my r values by subtracting the exponents. So this would become r to the power of 5. And 256, negative 256, divided by negative 8 would equal 32. Then my next step to figure out what just r is by taking the fifth root. That will tell me I have 2 equals r. Sometimes these ratios are going to be decimals, and that is okay, because as we saw in our previous ones, we did have r values that were not whole numbers. Okay, now that I know that r is equal to 2, I can plug it into my other equation. So I'll have negative 8 equals a sub 1 times 2 to the power of 1, which is just 2. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and that will give me my a sub 1 value of negative 4. Now I know my common ratio and my first term, I can write my explicit rule. A sub n equals negative 4 times 2 to the power of n minus 1. And that's my answer. Okay, so you should pause and try the next one on your own just to make sure you know how to do it before you move on to the series video. Okay, so for this one, hopefully you already have your answer and you are just checking. You should have had the equation 250 equals a sub 1 times r to the power of 4 minus 1, which would just be 3. And then your second equation would be 1562.5 equals a sub 1 times r to the power of 6 minus 1, which would be 5. So we have two geometric equations, and I want to figure out what the first term is and the common ratio. So I'm going to divide them. so that I can figure out what r equals first. So my a sub 1's cancel out, and when I divide, I get 6.25 equals r squared, because you subtract the exponents. Then I'm going to take the square root on both sides, and that will tell me my r value is 2.5, which I can then plug into my other equation. So now I have 250 equals a sub 1 times 2.5 to the power of 3. Now there's a few different orders that you could solve this one. I'm going to figure out what 2.5 to the power of 3 is first, and that would be 15.625, and then I'm going to divide both sides by that number. And when I do, I get my first term equaling 16. Once I know both of these, I can write my final equation, which is a sub n equals my first term, 16, times my common ratio, 2.5, to the power of n minus 1. And that is your final answer.